Right. Thank you. My name is Deepak Verma. I'm Director of Product Management at CommVault. I cover all of the hypervisors, including VMware and cloud. So in the interest of time, I had a much longer 20-25 minute session, but I will just hit the high points of the items that have come up since last year, and obviously stop me for any questions. So this is our virtualization dashboard. This is where VM admins come in, and funny thing that's this morning I came in and I wanted to make sure that everything was running, and of course there were a ton of failed jobs from Friday or from Saturday. And so the first task that VM admins do is obviously trying to figure out why, right? Why the red? And dig in. As you click through the red, we get into a job summary screen, and I can filter by any type that I want, and I was very, very adamant to find out exactly why I had so many failed jobs over the weekend. Because as you can imagine, we prepped this lab for the demos here. And for the demo pods.
Change the tapes.
Pardon me?
Somebody forgot to swap the
So
tapes.
when our IT security group found out on Friday that the demo pods downstairs will be connecting to this specific lab, they proceeded to go and shut all IP access to this lab. Therefore, none of my hosts could communicate to that. We got that resolved and we ran the jobs and they ran. But you know, it was a real showcase to go, I need to know what the heck's going on here with the environment to try to figure out why I have red. So I would imagine that is, not imagine, I know that is the one thing that most administrators would do is from a dashboard perspective, go in daily and look at how their hypervisors are doing. So from a hypervisor perspective, one of the unique things that I really love about this is how all of the hypervisors are treated exactly the same, right? So we talk about VSA traditionally for VMware, but all the cloud hypervisors, Azure Stack, well, Azure Stack being an on-prem one, and a good list of 10 plus hypervisors here that I'll drop down and talk through. Hyper-V, Google, Amazon, Azure, they're all treated exactly the same. Oracle, OCI, exactly in the same manner. So as a VM admin who is now dealing with a hybrid cloud environment, which has become pretty much a reality for most customers, you can go and manage any of the environments. And we've got, obviously, you can see from here, Azure Stack running, AWS, Nutanix. We've also got Azure Public running in there as well, but I'm going to click on my favorite one, our production VMware environment, vCenter environment. So a couple of things. One of the things that we added since last year is this file indexing option. So no longer do we need an agent to go into each of the individual virtual machines to index all the files. We will do file indexing either at a metadata level or at a content level just by simply flipping that button. And it all goes to the Solar engine that runs our indexing now. And come in after the fact, grab information from that individual virtual machine and index it down to whatever level is required. And then you can hit it from a search and compliance perspective and be able and then be able to get whatever analytics you want out of there. So going VSA agentless has been a big leap forward from this side. So the other thing that obviously from a VM admin perspective that we'll do is manage VMs in group levels. So VM groups, think of them as policies in the old nomenclature subclients. Basically what I want to do with a set of virtual machines, right? So I've got a number of virtual machines here.
Does CommVault offer, and I'm not sure what the term might be, but immediate restore where you can actually run a VM from a CommVault data store, let's say?
We'll mount the data store, yeah. So there's it's a live set of features, live recovery, which means we'll present the VM, present it mountable, and it'll run straight off of that data store we're presenting, and then we can do vMotion under the covers.
As well as VMware and other virtualized environments, or
whichever one's supported. So we have the list is pretty long, but as you get it to the less common hypervisors, then the live features don't exist.
You mentioned Nutanix. Does it support Nutanix AHV?
We do have live for Nutanix. So VM groups, basically a mechanism to group your logical virtual machines and assign storage plans or protection plans to them. So that's one of the enhancements. The other part, since last year, is obviously the plans have gotten a little more sophisticated. So for example, and this is one of my favorite ones, is combination of backup and disaster recovery. So Don here first talked about machine learning and applying AI in the back end. How do you actually show that? So to me, the only place that it's manifested itself, so if, for example, I create a ultra important plan here, you can set the backup frequency, which is your RPO, and in this case, let's say 4 hours. But the aspect that we've changed here is actually brought up this windowing mechanism where you select what's the window in which CommVault is allowed to operate. So obviously by default, I've got 7 to 7 that is normal production, but anything in the blue we're allowed to do. So this is where the machine learning kicks in. So even CommVault customers who are on older service packs, when they apply this service pack, all the metrics we've been collecting around how long it took to back up a VM, whether it was a big one or a one that kept missing, etc., we'll build that in, and then we'll use the ML algorithms to come and reprioritize how the jobs are done. So essentially it is, give me the window, give me the RPO that you want to achieve, and I will take care of the back end in organizing the schedule. Right? So no longer do I kick these 10 VMs and I got a group over here and I kick that over here and I got to balance the back end, proxy, etc. And this is just the beginning, right? I see this going into back end performance tuning as an example where we can spin up and down proxies as we need them.
So I have a question for you. So I remember when you guys first came up with the admin console and I saw the plans come up, and you go do stuff in plans, and then you still have access to the Java console, the older.
Still
right?
exists in the back.
It still exists, right? But in the back end, you'd see what that thing was doing to policies. It would create these policies that look kind of weird. And so,
Yep.
So is what this doing modifying? Is it playing super admin to that thing and doing all its magic back there?
Both. So there are a lot of functions, like the indexing function, that's only in admin console. You don't get it in Java GUI, right? Because so yes, that'll still be the computer, the car computer that the mechanic puts in to get every little bit and thing that can be tuned. But this will be the more abstracted view. Instead of doing 5 things over there, this will do the one thing.
Right. So, I mean, in this world, is there any reason to go back to? I mean, do you foresee any reason to go back to that? What are the
80-90% of the time, no. There's no reason to go back.
What was it called? I
No,
forgot what it was called. It was like
Java GUI.
Is there an intention to maintain that kind of relation? 'Cause I mean, I haven't seen what you described, but I've seen it in other tools. And I've always found that to be an incredibly helpful tool for teaching people how things work, trusting how systems work, to be able to see the reflection of a more advanced tool to the lower end tool, to see that back and forth.
Actually, the trick is to get, I don't want to call them legacy CommVault masters, but guys who have worked with CommVault for a long, long time, who really understand the architecture. They actually don't like, I don't say they don't like it, because this is very helpful, but that's where they lived, and they know that. That's how they think. And so to get them to move to this is going to change it.
Well,
you have to retrain a lot of people, and to get them to think less almost and let CommVault do what it's got to do.
It's more familiarity.
That's what's going to be very hard to do with some people.
So the new generation of customers, absolutely, this is what they lead with. They experience it this way, they deploy it that way, this way, and then as they get through more reasons for them to get into the older console, we start bringing them into admin console. But there is the classic CommVault customer that it's a little bit harder to get them near
Well,
things.
if you're really good at a bad UI, that's still faster than a brand new good UI that you don't know.
The human element at that point.
How much of what you can do is available through APIs?
Everything that you can do in admin console is available through APIs. And it's actually open, api.commvault.com. You can see everything that's on there. And we keep adding more and more in there. And I'll say there's some more classic things that you can still do in Java GUI. So I'd say our API is everything in admin console plus a little bit more. Nothing gets developed in admin console without having an API.
Okay.
All right, so
The console doesn't export the API, right?
The console invokes the API.
Yeah, that's good.
Yep.
I guess the question is,
But
the rest
I
of
wanna-
the API fully available to support all the functionality of the admin console?
Yeah, no, it's the reverse.
Yeah, he's asking.
I want to do something the first time through the GUI because I don't want to look up what the commands are,
right.
and I want have a button on the GUI that says export the code so that I can then cut and paste and do it 400 more times.
I got it. I got it on record on video.
PS, other vendors in your space do that.
I understand that. Yep, I understand the requirement. You're not the first to ask for it, but yeah, it's something that's on there. It's on our roadmap.
It's kind of how GUIs should work. GUIs should consume APIs and allow you to export so you can see what they've done.
They got the first part.
Yeah.
Consumes it.
So two other things that I think are new or exciting, at least, that there's been a lot of little new things since last year. I'm not going to create a new plan for you guys. I want to show you. Last year I talked about the recovery readiness report. So this year, what we've done halfway through is actually manifested it in two manners. You still have the recovery readiness report, but we added a whole bunch of stuff around RPO monitoring as well. So in this environment, we've got a replication that's setting up, and of course my RPOs were not met because of the weekend. But being able to see RPOs and RTOs, the status, the replication, the to from hypervisor. Because we support VMware, obviously the VMware to VMware, multiple replication techniques, but also VMware to AWS, VMware to Azure, complete with failover, failback, or SRM-like or light type functionality. Test dev labs, coming soon in those environments. This starts becoming important. So now again, from the hybrid environment, if I'm doing replication across multiple hypervisors, I'm looking at from one set of one viewpoint, seeing things consistently, right? So I think that's pretty powerful as well.
Since you brought it up, what about VMware on AWS? Are you managing that replication?
Yes. So VMware on AWS is supported right out of the gate.
The vSAN stuff, and do you have your own?
So I'm getting there.
Okay,
we do support their replication as well. So with VMware, when VMware Cloud on AWS came up, we released support for the SDDC. We're going to release support for 1.5 here, 1.5 pretty shortly. But yeah, that's supported as a target. They don't support VIO yet in VMC, so we don't support it either.
When you're doing replication, you're not actually using like a storage system replication API. You're doing your own
Correct.
API.
We are doing our own replication and
software-based replication.
Exactly. Yep. Software-based replication, and actually there are three levels of replication, which I will show you.
No, in both.
Here?
Other way. They only have a couple of storage systems they do replication.
The replication group would be nothing other than grouping a logical bunch of instances that you want to replicate. And last year we had only talked about LiveSync, and LiveSync Direct hadn't made it into the UI, and then IO was this funky beta thing. So we've added in, obviously, this traditional LiveSync. We have a LiveSync Direct, which will perform snapshots either at the VM level, the vSphere level, and or at the hardware level, and then extract data from there, bypass local backup altogether, transfer that data compressed over to the other side and apply it. So the idea is I want to get RPO less than an hour type functionality. I don't have time to back up locally, dedupe it, and then transfer it, dash it across. So LiveSync Direct can be managed from there. And the coolest one I like is LiveSync IO, where we're using VMware's APIs for IO filtering to get a live stream straight from the ESX server and then pushing it out to the other side. So now we're acting and managing the journal component as well. So we call it RP stores, where we're collecting and managing the data on either side. So from a setup perspective,
yeah, that's the tab.
I can select what VMs, and this is a IO1 labs that I have here with a bunch of IO VMs. So I can select a VM that I want to perform to. I can select a plan that I want to associate it. That's how frequently it'll, I'm going to go hit it. And I can select a target, and I think the recovery options are pretty slick here. So from a target, obviously it's going to be VMware at the target side. I've got three types of replication I can do within VIO. Live replication, which is the moment the data comes in, start streaming it over to the other side and applying it to the target VM. So we're achieving almost hardware-like functionality, asynchronously transferring the data from our proxy to proxy and then applying it on the target VM. The second type is snapshot, where not only am I transferring the data, but I'm making point-in-time snapshots of the environment and retaining those snapshots. So here, if I set a 6-hour interval with a 4-day retention, I'm going to have that many snaps sitting at the target side that I can roll back to get consistency. So not only am I current in terms of replication, but if you wanted to, for example, fail over and say, I want to go back 6 hours, I can perform that.
Limitations to live sync?
Sorry, repeat the question.
Are there any distance limitations to live sync?
Oh,
So it could be across the world, for instance. Like
your RPO will be dictated by your latency.
Berlin to Florida or something like that.
Yeah, it's asynchronous.
I know it's asynchronous, but he did mention it's hardware-like.
Hardware-like, it's asynchronous.
And you notice there's no delay in the activity here. So the moment an I/O is actually occurring in a VM, it's being replicated.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, if it's being replicated that fast, there may be a problem here.
It's synchronous, like infinite, that's asynchronous.
If it's
okay?
asynchronous, then it's not RPO 0.
It's not RPO 0.
And you're sending small changes. I mean, for the most part, you're contiguous and consistent and forever small changes, but it's still,
Not if I change a lot at once.
Your recovery readiness section there, I get caught up on the RPO, RTO.
Sure.
I think it's good language for us to talk about. It's a good lexicon for us to carry around. But when I talk with CXOs, when I'm talking to them about their business, it's my belief that they don't understand what that is. They don't really care what that is.
Right.
They actually care about the particular business units that make up the organization that drive revenue for the company.
Exactly.
So is there something that you have that you can show me that you guys are looking at, maybe it's not this quarter, but it's coming, where you're actually going to be helping customers? Because the way I walk a customer through, the old days, it's a business impact analysis. Yep. Some companies still want to do that based on dollar amount. I like to take them down a path through what's the mission of the organization. Let's focus on the mission.
Sure.
And that might comprise 40 servers.
Yep.
Let's focus just on those 40 servers out of your 300 servers you have.
Yep. Okay. I got the question. Give me 2 minutes to wrap this up.
Okay.
And I will address your question.
Thank you.
So with LiveSync IO, the last level that I think is the best part of it is Live's great, Snapshot is great, I can retain, but it's granular, which means not only do I get to retain the snapshots, but all the time periods in between there. So try to graphically display that. You have 5 minutes of crash consistency in this example. So if you picked any periods of time between those lines, you would get a crash consistent application. If you picked any period of time on those lines, you would get an application consistency, and then you've got history that you can maintain as well. Right, so that's from a backup perspective.
Wow.
What it looks like from a restore perspective.
That's pretty cool.
Let me go into that real quick. My plans. My virtualization. Virtual machines. Sorry. Plans. Here we go. So we built a separate I/O monitor. I've got this replicated, VM3 being replicated. And so, for example, if I wanted to do a test boot of that environment, this is where it's going to start asking me, all right, I have these specific points that I can give you application consistency. And you can either select from the graph, or we can go down and say, I want to go and recover from a specific snapshot point. What are your times periods? Or I want to recover from an app consistent point, and where can you come from an application? So if you had, for example, SQL Oracle running in there, you quiesced that, you took a snapshot, so you're also running replication on that. Option number 1, just bring me up right now, it's going to be crash consistent. Option number 2, roll back to a previous point. Option number 3, I can go back any point in time I want and then roll forward. So there's granularity that we can play with because of the maintaining the RP store. And then at the end of the day, it becomes an equation of how much can your network push versus how much do you want to retain on the target side. So not to ignore your
I knew you weren't
dashboard question.
doing that.
I would go into reports for that, and I'll go back into the recovery readiness report. So the way we've kind of built this, and you're right, it's not from an individual VM perspective, but it's really groups of entities. What we've been toying with is working with things like Remedy or other management systems so that they can give us that single source of truth to say this is what an application comprises. It's these 10 VMs in this order plus these physical servers and maybe this NAS and this Oracle box that all need to live together. So we've always had a logical group concept, and I kind of call that client groups. Mm-hmm. And we've got a bunch of groups set up in there. So, and that can comprise obviously any one of those entities. And then what I can do on that group is play these what if games. So for example, if my boss asks me, hey, we need to fail the lab over, we need to fail my environment over, to how many boxes are going to meet your RPO? Right now, I can give you confidence and say 4 out of my 16 servers, 25% of my environment can do it. Because we had some issues, obviously, on the weekend. So what if we went 2 days? Did the job get done? What's your recovery confidence in terms of 2 days if I give you an RPO of 2 days? So it'll go recalculate and say, yep, 8 of your boxes will be able to meet that RPO, and the same thing for RTO. So the interesting thing about RTO is you'd ask, but how does CommVault know RTO? Because that's the amount of time it takes to bring a box up. Because we've been tracking metrics such as how long it took to restore the data, how long it took to test boot the data, that machine, we're defining this thing called an actual RTO, which, what did I click on? I clicked on one of the items. We're defining this thing called actual RTO, which is accumulating those metrics and say, best estimate, I can bring this box up in an hour and 4 minutes, and I can bring this box up in 10 minutes, and I can bring this box up in 56 minutes based on the amount of data that I know will replay the amount of time it took to test boot. So it's a step closer into giving confidence to pull the trigger.
Are you building relationship between those servers? So let's say that server that takes an hour, 4 minutes, that's my database, and those other ones can't run until that database is up.
Not today.
Okay.
Not. And that'd be
something really good to do, because that relationship is very, very important for customers that are planning their disaster recovery, and knowing, because when IT goes to have the conversation with the business, we'll talk in this language that we understand. But as soon as we start talking about the business and that impact, then all of a sudden the dollar signs become available to go and make it so.
You're absolutely correct. And the challenge, I'll quote what one customer said. There's no way I'm going to put logic in here to show it within CommVault on 10,000 virtual machines. In other words, I'm not going to build the logic within CommVault. You need to be smart enough to go to a system and extract that knowledge. So we said, great, you had an enterprise management system that we can go and pull and build the logic. We'll gladly do that, because it's pretty easy to do. It's give us the single source of truth and make sure that truth is always truthful. Otherwise, we will execute on what you told us. Right?
So that's building a baseline and building normalcy, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So we're making steps in that direction. I think client computer groups, but getting that API information from Remedy or whatever, BMC, whatever system people prefer. But the other part is making this available through APIs, so maybe they can put calls within CommVault, say, I want you to define something called a logical group. This is the order I want it in. These 5 I care about. These 2 I really don't care about. So yeah, they maybe get replicated, but don't bring them up. I don't care about that. So it does get into the business logic. I know it's called the recovery readiness, but I call this the confidence level report. I can say.
Yeah, see, and what I want is really confidence level. I want to say, given the experience over the past month, the probability that you will be able to restore this VM when you want it is 82%, because 1 out of every 5 backups fails.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Those are the metrics we're collecting and going off of here. So.
Because
I'm getting the big
for all but the mission critical apps, I don't care if the backup fails. I only care if the backup fails twice in a row.
Yeah.
If the backup fails, the restore will fail.
Oh my gosh.
You data people live in a strange world.
The restore failing is an RPE, resume producing event.
That's what Alexa's for.
The RPE is the most severe type of CLM.
All right, I'm getting the big timeout signal here, but LifeSync IO, recovery readiness, VSA or proxy-based indexing, and then just admin console overall just getting better are kind of my top takeaways.
The live stuff?
Thank you, I appreciate it.